Hi, my name is Isaac Quevedo, and this is my creative critical reflection on the film opening, The Loud Things We See. So, to start off, I believe my film opening uses a variety of conventions to tell a story, but also slightly challenges a few at the same time. Some conventions and challenges are the typical settings and surroundings in which a blind person would be placed. As you can see here, my main character is all alone in the forest. In many films about blind people, a person with this disability is usually placed somewhere considered safe and somewhere they can easily be reached or find their way back, usually due to the risk that comes with being blind. They're also usually accompanied by someone, either being a friend, family, etc., or have people around them. My opening challenges this by placing the main character in a setting in which you wouldn't usually find her. Throughout almost the whole opening, she is alone, in the forest, with nobody around. This is done to make the audience realize how truly vulnerable she is, and to get them to understand the intensity of the situation. This intensity will lead the viewer to understand later in the film why it is going to be absolutely necessary for the main character to use her other senses. This leads into the other topic of how it represents the blind and the typical conventions of this character. Often, blind people are said to have other enhanced senses that help them in certain situations or help them just to get around. Here, she's using touch, and I place emphasis on this by getting a little closer to her hand and making the audience realize that this is the way she gets around. I place emphasis on touch as well when she was in the forest. As she was touching the leaves, uh, the audience can realize that she actually relies on touch a lot to get around. She also relies on a guiding stick and her sunglasses to get around, which is typical of this character. After showing a few of my peers the film, I realized many weren't sure why she had her eyes closed. Here, you can see her eyes are squinted, and many of my peers didn't understand why she wouldn't just have her eyes open. But I actually researched this fact prior to making the film, and I found that blind people's eyes are actually very sensitive to the light, so they squint. As you can see in this article, uh, for these people, meaning blind people, light did intensify the pain of their migraines, leading the authors to conclude that light receptors in the eye, apart from those used for vision, were related to exacerbating migraines. So they become so used to squinting their eyes that they just are constantly squinted. Other conventions I actually used were conventions of plot, such as a flash forward or foreshadowing I used at the beginning of the film opening. That cut you just saw was a flash forward, and now the film right here is where it would actually begin. That's why I raised the exposure to give it more of a dream like quality to the beginning of the film. And I also use typical conventions of camera work. There are many close-ups that I used throughout the whole film, and I didn't challenge too many of those conventions. However, one last convention I challenged was editing. This one challenged in two ways. The first being the non-traditional the beginning of the sequence, where I showed a clip for 2 or 3 seconds, as you can see here, and then transitioned into a black screen, which stayed on for about another second. This was all used to give context to where the character was and the setting around her. The second way I challenged the convention of editing was through the parallel editing technique, which connected the flash forward to the present. And I believe this editing technique isn't used very often. Here, later in the film, I matched up the position of the blind girl with the same position, and I'm sorry, she was in the same position later in the film when it transitions right there, just in a different location. The sounds also matched up. This was used to juxtapose the setting of the forest to the beginning of the film where she is in her room. I believe my project engages with audiences because the beginning of the film jumps straight into the plot and gets the audience to ask questions and wonder why everything is taking place the way it is. Here, there is really no context as to why my character is there, and this leads to curiosity, which will make them want to see my film more. If this film were to be made, it would probably be as a full-length feature film. It would go under the drama genre and would be targeting audiences anywhere from 18 years old to mid-50s. It would be distributed in theaters all around the world and would eventually be put on DVD. Now, on to technology and my production skills. I used iMovie to edit my film, but we can talk about that a little later. As you can see here, through these first clips, beginning from around here to around here, uh, I had begun filming a few weeks prior to when I was supposed to film, or when I was recommended to film. And then I started editing all these clips together, but I realized there was no continuity in the shots, and I didn't really like how the editing came out. I realized that this was probably because I had strayed away from the original storyboard. This is a storyboard I used that I had originally planned, but when I first went to film, I didn't really use this. I didn't rely on this. So I had to go back a few days later to reshoot everything and started from scratch. I used a tripod this time, making the shots much more stable, and stuck to the original plan. Since I knew my mistakes from the previous session, the shots came out much clearer and much smoother, in fact. I had actually improved my camera work by a lot. Also, as I was editing, after practicing with iMovie, I began being able to adjust clips much easier and much faster, and I knew my way around the software much better than I had before. As previously mentioned, I use iMovie to edit my film. I downloaded the latest version to edit it all, and I was glad I did. So, because there were many more features here than on the old system. Where I had the most trouble was in editing sound, since it played such a vital part in my opening. I used GarageBand to match many of the sounds in the parallel cut together, and also did so to make the music fade out once the main character took her headphones out. This you can see, these are all the jumble of sounds here, and here is the sound of her music and her headphones, and it fades out. I had to do this all on GarageBand. I got almost all the sounds I used from a great website recommended to me by a friend. The website's called YouTube Audio Library, and here there's a variety of royalty-free music and sound effects for anybody to use. Lastly, to create the graphic at the beginning of the film, which you can see here, I used a website called canva.com right here, and create a simple logo called IQ Productions, which stood for my first and last initials. I am very happy with how the product turned out, and I hope you will enjoy watching it, or have enjoyed watching it, as much as I did when making it. Thank you.